I want to welcome you again this afternoon, for those of you who might not have gotten to the cemetery. And I'm very grateful for every one of you that came. I mean, it speaks of your interest in Mitchell County preservation. And we, as a commission group, we have put together an 81-page tour of Mitchell County that is going to be available in book form soon. It is now available in a copy like this. Last summer we took on the project of touring Mitchell County. We took all the back roads and the front roads and everything in between, and we traveled and we found all these hidden gems. And you know, it was like we were ahead of ourselves in doing that, because this year's Mitchell County, or this year's preservation theme, is discovering the hidden gems of Mitchell County. So I feel we were ahead of that by doing this in 2011. I feel that this is a work in progress. And any work in progress is never finished. I mean, you can never say, well, yeah, I'm finished now. I've got everything in place. That isn't a work in progress. A work in progress adds, it subtracts, it divides, it multiplies, it changes, it moves around, and it upgrades. And speaking of moving around, this is my third location for Stacyville history. I started in a renovated part of Banner Pizza, and it was a room about 46 by 14 feet, and it got too small in 2 or 3 years. So then the school became available, and then I occupied 2 classrooms up at Visitation School. And then I got the sad news the week before Christmas, yeah, the school is going to be demolished. And I says, well, how much time do I have? And the city clerk said, well, we'd like to have you out by February 1st. And this was the week before Christmas. And I said to the city clerk, that's January. We're going to have to move in January? And God looked out on us, because we had the most perfect January to do this. It was a big challenge to move everything. And without the help of the city council, the police chief, the mayor, the city clerk, maintenance men, we could have never done it, because all the heavy furniture had to be brought in. I have a quote here that I really like. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. That's from Henry Ford. I think our Stacyville history has been enriched by 3 very important families. And because I can't speak about all the families, I picked 3. And those are the Blake, Heeman, and Stacy families. And they were the ones that really originated the whole concept of this little village. Adam Blake and Nicholas Heeman were the ones that settled about 2 miles straight north of here. They came in May of 1855. And they didn't waste any time getting a land grant. My great-great-grandfather, Adam, went to Dubuque to get the land deed, and he arrived here in May 31st, and he went down and got the deed at Dubuque on June 15th, 1855. And it's signed by Franklin Pierce, President Franklin Pierce. And the Heemans did the same thing. Now, the Blakes and the Heemans have a lot in common, because they both of the great-great-grandparents. Carmen is the wife of Matt Heeman, and Matt Heeman is the great-great-grandfather of Nicholas Heeman, and I am the great-great-granddaughter of Adam Blake. And they both built the log cabins. And the log cabin of my great-great-grandfather is still inside the kitchen of the current home. Brian Weber lives there now, but the log cabin is encased with modern materials. And I don't know what happened to the Heman log cabin. But the thing that's very distinct about the Heman place is that they are in their 6th generation of farming. The 6th generation is already in farming. They celebrated their 150th on a farm, continuous farming, back in, was it 2005 or 6?
It was 5.
2005. Yeah, that would make sense because they came in 1855. That would be the, okay. And naturally they settled by the rivers, the Little Cedar River. And in December, Homer I. Stacy came from, the Stacy family really came to America from England in 1621. They came here the year after the Mayflower arrived. But they moved, they came to New York, and Homer came from New York, and he had a rather good education, and education was very much on his mind. And he wanted his children to receive a very good education. So there was a time when they moved from Stacyville to Mitchell, because Mitchell did have an accredited high school, the Cedar Valley Seminary, and that's what he wanted for his children. He had 6 children in all, three boys and 3 girls. And we wouldn't have a lot of this history if it hadn't been for the oldest daughter. Ella Marie kept a very detailed journal. I wish she would have kept the journal longer. The journal is very good of what she had written, but it was kind of discontinued after a few years. Also, the Blakes and Hemans have something else in common. My great-great-grandfather's wife, Christina, she donated money for a church bell. And so did Nicholas Heman. He donated money for a church bell. The first Catholic church was a white frame building, and if you have a chance after a while, you might be able to see some of these pictures that are kind of hidden. This is kind of the church corner here. And later, that large bell that they donated to the white frame church, that bell is now in our church, in the 1905 church. This poster behind you here represents the 100th anniversary of the Visitation Church. And it was a display that was done by a 4-H group. They asked me for the pictures, and they displayed that, and they had it at the Mitchell County Fair in 2005. Here's a bit of trivia. The Homer I. Stacy family, I stands for Isaac. They had a lot of Isaacs in their family because Homer's father, his first name was Isaac. But they settled also on the Little Cedar River, but it was just a mile, no, probably only a half a mile, just straight east here on the blacktop, on that first farm to the north. And it has been said in the diary by Ella Marie that the Stacy children all became very good swimmers, because when their mother Amelia wanted to have a rest on a Sunday afternoon, their aunt would take all the kids down to the river and teach them how to swim. And kind of the difference between the Blakes and the Hemans were more interested in farming, but the Stacys were much more interested in starting a town, a mill, businesses, a park. And it was because Homer Stacy gave money for a city park, we became known as Stacyville. And if he hadn't done that, there was another influential family by the name of Dyer. And you saw, there was a tombstone on that cemetery that we just left now that had the name Dyer on it. And They were always in competition. They were very, very competitive families. And after Homer donated the money for the city park, well then they got the right to call it Stacyville. Otherwise, we would be called Dyersville. At one time, at the turn of the 20th century, there was two Stacyvilles. There was one down in Monroe County. Monroe County is the second last county in central Iowa from the bottom. And the problem was, at that time, at the turn of the century, the mail was all carried by railroad. It come in by train and went out by train. And the mail that was supposed to come to us was going down there and vice versa. So they said, well, we have to settle this once and for all. Somebody's got to give up the name Stacyville. So it was the one down in Monroe County that had to give up their name, and they are now known as Georgetown. And I was in contact with a lady from Clear Lake who told me this whole story about the two Stacyvilles, because she apparently had lived in the other one, or her ancestors came from the other one. And also, interestingly enough, is that the lady that brought us all these photos of the Stacy family, she is the great-granddaughter of Homer Stacy, and she is from Wapello County. And Wapello and Monroe are just across from each other. Back in 2003, the great-granddaughter of Homer came up here. Her name is Dorothy Boyson. And she and her husband, A.J., made several trips up here, and they were planning a huge Stacy family reunion. And they wondered if they could use the city park, which was very appropriate because it was their great-granddad that provided the money for the park. And they wanted to make a huge Stacy reunion. And when it was all finished, August 12th and 13th weekend in 2003, they managed to get 66 people up here. They used our city park, and I remember Banner Pizza delivered about 24 pizzas, and we delivered salads, and the whole weekend they had this big group of people up here. And they visited our church, they visited our school, they went out to the Stacy farm, and recently the Stacy farm barn, which was built by Homer's son, Asa, in 1912, that was taken down by the current owner. The current owner on that place is Greg Rhetoric. Is it Greg or Gary?
Gary.
I think it's Gary Rhetoric. And we had the feeling that that tornadic wind of September 2nd, just before last year's Labor Day weekend, we had the feeling that the wind took it down. And so we wanted to really get the facts on it, so I went up to their place and I says, we were so surprised to see the 1912 barn came down. Because Penny and I had just been out there that same June, and we had taken a lot of photos of the Stacy house and the Stacy barn. And he says, well, it wasn't the wind that took it down. He said he was concerned about safety. And we weren't. We walked under those huge beams. We took pictures. And but we were kind of hoping, well, we'd need to win 10 to 15 lotteries to fix it up. Let's see. Okay. The reason I started a museum was that back in 2000 I had this idea just at a coffee group. Somebody came in a coffee group and said, you know, Mary, you ought to start a museum. I thought about it for a little while and thought, why not? 2006 we celebrate our sesquicentennial. What are we going to do that's different? So I started scratching around. I wrote lots of letters to councilmen, parish board members, school board members. I wrote lots of letters to start getting some feedback and to get some information from these various organizations. Well, it happened. I mean, we gradually built up, and right now one of our best collections is the Monitor Review. And I see our press news lady left already, but she's from the Monitor Review newspaper. And we have a continuous set of newspapers from the Monitor Review starting at 1910 up to 2012. And a man here by the name of Ernie Falk, he was the one that started saving the newspapers. And it so happened he was walking by the old Monitor Review office one day, and the old Printer Brown, they all called him Printer Brown. William Brown was the editor of the paper for many, many, many years. And so they were going to take the old building down, and Ernie Falk walks by, and he says, all those newspapers were on the shelves. And he wondered what Printer Brown was going to do with them, and he says, well, you can have them. Well, he took them all, and he took it upon himself to have all of these books bound. He started with 1910, and he went up to 1955. That's how much he had on the shelves. Then the building came down, and I mean, talk about a preserver. We have lots of photos in these albums here that come from Ernie. He was just enthralled with picture taking. And he had the best pictures of old downtown Stacyville that you could ever have. There are now 30 copies at the library. I wish we could have them, but they're for viewing at the library, but you may not take them out. The library will not give them out. But it was because he had these very exclusive, great downtown old pictures that we were able to get 30 wonderful laminated pictures. And I think the library should have a better way to display them. Like, you can view them at the library, but you can't, they won't let you take them out, they won't let you check them out. And just recently, less than a month ago, I had a couple from St. Paul. And they came down, and their name is in the guest book. And they were looking for the building that we're going to go to after for our refreshments right here on the corner. They were looking to see if they could get pictures of that building in 1912, because the woman's mother had a millinery and a dress shop there. And so they called me, and I says, well, unfortunately, the library doesn't open until 2 o'clock, and they were coming down from an appointment from Iowa City because her husband was seeing a doctor in Iowa City for his cancer. And so they were coming from Iowa City. Could they stop here and view those, and if I had any pictures? Well, I knew where the best pictures were, but they weren't here. So we made arrangements, and we went over to the library, and they were just, the couple was just so thrilled that they got to see the old downtown pictures. And that building that we're going to go to, as I said, was her mother's millinery and dress shop, and it was run by 3 sisters. It was run by Katie and Annie and, I bet it won't come up with the other name, Rose. Rose was the lady's name that came. And she happened to be Bonnie Halfman. Halfman is a native, that's a common name here. And she was from Shoreview, Minnesota. And so I thought, well, with a name like Halfman, I better call Verena Halfman Kramer, and I better call Fritzy Kramer. And they came and met them here, and they've just had a great reunion. But these albums are just all bits and pieces of all types of things that Ernie had, that he had collected. And another thing I did right from the start was, in preparation for the 2006 sesquicentennial, I wanted people to do family histories and business histories. And in order to do this, there's one person right here today that wrote up a lovely history. It's Louise Walk. She had the restaurant there on Main Street. And all these businesses wrote histories, and they're all compiled in these books. Beverly Hatton, some of these are just great histories. You know, they could go way back when their business began. And I realize I'm jumping around a lot here.
Digressing?
I'm digressing now. Just reading my notes here. So in the beginning I thought, well, I have to make some kind of a judgment. I can't just take every old pencil and every old magnet and you just can't do that. So the decision was made, if it didn't have the Stacyville name on it, we don't save it. So that's one way you can narrow your collection down. And so we have a lot of that. The things that we have that bear the Stacyville name is, we have all kinds of calendars, and to date they aren't even out of the box yet. Some calendars go way back to the early 1900s of businesses downtown. We have telephone books, and they're all local telephone books that we keep because it had the Stacyville name on it. We have genealogies. I asked for genealogies through the newspaper. And I was working as a reporter for the Monitor Review for 10 years, and the editor gave me permission to run an ad in the Monitor Review for 6 months asking for genealogies. That was the good part. The other side of the coin was very few people were willing to donate their family genealogies. I have written my own. Mine is in one of the showcases back there. We have business account books from automotive businesses. Business, as I already said, business histories, school photos, church photos. We have a town plate, we have a church plate. We have lists of all the teachers that taught at Visitation School, and unfortunately I can't display them all because they're on charts. When I was in school, I had them all lined up along the chalkboard, but now they're just wrapped up in chart form and just in the showcases, but they're all there. Here's an example of all the pastors starting at 1858 up to the current, 2012. City Council proceedings. Cheryl Mullenbeck was very insistent that she find all the council proceedings, and she found them all, starting from 1900. We found every book. And do you know where some people store things? They were stored above the area in the ceiling. They were not in neat files. We crawled up there. Literally crawled up there. We had a lot of help from the Mullenbeck family, Berlin and Corey, and we brought them all down. And she just rejoiced when she had every city council proceeding from 1900 onward. Now we don't have them all here because recently the files are all kept at the city hall. I mean at the city clerk's office. So we don't have them all here, but we have all the early ones. We have lots of atlases. We have the 1911, these are Mitchell County, 1911, 1967, 1977, 1989, thanks to Carmen Heeman. She donated some very lovely atlas books. We have some framed First Communion pictures, marriage pictures, framed high school graduation pictures. And my thought was, when they were turned in, I thought, those people were proud of their First Communion and marriage and graduation. What happens today is, more or less, we get the certificate and it goes into a drawer. these are very nice. These are from Dorothy Pop. And of course they involve her mother, who was Frances Falk. No, Melvin Pop. Melvin Pop's mother was Frances Falk, not Dorothy. Okay. And also the marriage certificate are her husband's parents. That would be Melvin Pops. We have lots of canceled bank checks. And of course I have some of my grandfather. He spelled John J-H-O-N. That's how he spelled John. Blake had 3 spellings. I was told, I have a story about Heman too. This lady from St. Paul told me that the reason some of these names got changed from 1 N to 2 N, she said the ones that don't have the 2 N's, they got careless. They just omitted the 1 N. We have German Savings Bank records from 1918. We have the city Stacyville history book that Cheryl wrote. She started it in 2005 and it was ready for the sesquicentennial ahead of time. We sold it a whole year before the sesquicentennial. We have the famous Mitchell County one-room school books right there, the bound copies, and we just visited one last week at Maroa. We visited number 7 Cedar School, better known as Walnut Grove. Over here we have we had a very excellent quilting group, and they called themselves Thread Clippers. And they ran their club for 20 years. The most members they ever had was 20. And they have turned in all of their books, and they are no longer in. Dolly Heckenmiller was one of those. She was one of the Thread Clippers. Very excellent quilter. This is the Stacy genealogy chart. This was given to me because when we had our sesquicentennial, I named the great-granddaughter of Homer Stacy. I named the great-granddaughter and her husband, A.J. They were the grand marshals of the parade. And she was so impressed with that recognition that she brought a lot of framed pictures where Casey is sitting right there, framed pictures of the Stacy family. She did the genealogy chart, and she did whatever she could that we would, this is to the 8th generation. She worked this chart out to the 8th generation. And I wish we could go that far, but we can't. But even this piece of history that I first read from, that's also from her. I mean, we wouldn't have this, I bet, if it hadn't been for her. And we still keep in touch. We have Christmas cards going back and forth every year. Very nice couple. We have things from the American Legion, 569. We have things from the auxiliary. Boy Scouts was very prevalent here. 4-H was very big, has been very big for many years. All the 4-H books are housed in this trunk. They're all labeled, the names of the 4-H clubs and the members, their projects. Another highlight of Stacyville history is that one year we had exactly 7 Eagle Scouts. And the 7 Eagle Scouts are Adam Meyer, Gary Meyer, who is now Reverend Gary Meyer, Willie Meyer, Alex Thiebold, Matt Thiebold, who just got married yesterday, Joseph Tomey, Matthew Tomey, Wesley Hardy. Well, Wesley Hardy was later on. He was not among the 7. He received his Eagle Scout later. And then, of course, the little trivia is that when Christmas time rolls around, every business likes to give a little souvenir. We have souvenirs from the Wolf's Grocery Store. And you know what their product line was? Their product line was Jack Sprat. And I have Mary, come in. Tell her to come in. There's chairs here. Jack Sprat. We have cardboard from the products that came here for the store. And people used to love to give yardsticks away, bottle openers, jackknives, 12-inch rulers, 6-inch rulers, magnets, salt and pepper shakers, levels, pens and pencils galore. And now I'd like to go with the flags. This flag here I call the Perkins flag. It's that big. This flag was hung in full view at the school because I had the space for it. It hung from the ceiling and almost went down to the floor. And schoolrooms have high ceilings. So it's a very big flag. And so when we took it down, Emmy Kuntz and her brother, Kenny Krebsbeck, they know how to fold flags. And I am trying to get a triangular showcase for the flag. But it was the last flag that hung in front of the bank building, that red brick bank building. It was the last flag that hung there when it was the post office. And when we got a new post office and moved just down north by 1 block, then they no longer use this flag. And this flag, I think we'll need to refold this one. This is something that some family personally gave this. This is Fred and Marcella Hellback gave this. And the most unique flag I have is the one back there. It has 45 stars. It's the flag when Utah was admitted to the Union in 1898, and they never made a flag with 46 or 47 stars, never made one. The longest flag we ever had that we used for flying was from the 48-star flag from 1912 up until 1950, but that changed too in 1950 when Alaska became the 49th state and Hawaii became the 50th state. That changed. So that now the current flag is the flag that we have the longest. It's from 1950 to 2012, that would make it 62 years. 62 years. One of the very touching pieces of history is the fact that Stacyville has already had 2 very impressive flyovers. The first flyover occurred in 1996 for John Pitson. John Pitson was in the Vietnam War. And his plane went down in 1972. And his remains were not found for 23 years. And when the remains were, hope I have these up right side up. His remains were not found until 1994. And then they did not reach us until 1996. And the neat part of that is I still had the guest house running in 1996. And the person that was in charge of the flyover for John Pitson's funeral, he stayed at my guest house. And I'll never forget with what, meticulous care these servicemen take when they have to do a flyover for somebody. He was in charge of that, but get it just right. And he got everything just right. Then more recently, we had a flyover for pilot priest Everett Heeman. It's just chokes you up. Friday of this week, I received 2 uniforms from a retired Air Force
Chief Master.
native of Stacyville. His uniforms are over there by that great big picture on the wall. He has given the gray uniform, which is called the Airman Battle Dress Uniform, and the green uniform is called the Battle Dress Uniform. And in our spare time, the commission does do other things. In 2010, it was Cheryl Mullenbeck who gets all the credit for naming Julie Addington to the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame. And she worked on that from 2005. She submitted her nomination in 2005, and that did not occur until 2010. It was August 28th in Des Moines, 2010. Then last year, at least 4 of us, 4 of the commission members, we attended the National Main Street Conference, and we were very lucky because it was held in Des Moines. And there were 4 of us that attended that also. Last year we also achieved, through the diligence of Penny Morris, that the David community received an informative sign for its little village. And that was in 2011. 2011 is also when we did the drive-through. And for those of you who probably weren't here when I first showed this book, this is the book, 81 pages.
The draft.
Pardon? This is the draft, thank you.
The final copy is about 150
Really?
with color pictures.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. That's what I get for not attending Tuesday's meeting, right? Yeah, this is the draft copy, 81. And if it's in book form, it's going to be 150. This, in fact, our pastor this morning, this little community was on the pastor's mind this morning. He asked us, what's that little place just north of McIntyre? And everybody in the congregation said, Bailey! So Bailey's right on the front cover here. Another wonderful hidden gem. I like things like this. This is something that Alex Blake gave me. It's tattered and torn. And the fact that it's tattered and torn, it just, to me, it just has so much character. It's a simple Mitchell County map of 1875. And it comes right from an atlas book. They're found also in the Good Atlas book if you're lucky enough to get one that's in good condition. And then I like to do things like this. I guess this is the teacher in me. I was a retired teacher. I am a retired teacher. I taught for 40 years with no break in between. And I like to post things like this. And I have not had enough time to post everything, and we're running out of wall space. And I have to reserve the front area for Tom Pitson. Tom Pitson wants to take a picture of all of his bird carvings, and he wants to have them all on display. And he said the last time he was here, he says, save that wall out there for me. So I have to save that wall for him. I wish he could have had his pictures here today, but it was up. This is a former pastor, Cletus Hawes. He was responsible of starting a building for low housing. And for a while it was named after him. It was called Hawes Court. And this is Melvin Heeman, also a pilot priest. I mean, he got some very distinguished honors and medals and degrees. And this is our most recent priest, Reverend Gary Meyer. I have Reverend Gary Meyer is up here also. This picture here. And I haven't even touched this area. This is all books from the church, sacramentary books, Bibles. There's Bibles in here from every language practically. Wonderful books. Here's a Catholic, this is what we call a Catholic sick call set. It's complete. This little thing up here represents a little tabernacle. And when we went to visitation school, we went to Mass every single morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And this was the little tabernacle that was down in the church basement. And Eugene Wagner is very good in preserving history. He's just excellent in that area. And so this is something that Eugene Wagner had saved. Another thing Eugene Wagner did for me, he was the one who put the post in the ground for Julia Addington's flag. He also took upon himself to do each gravesite individually of all the Addingtons. And I had a different way to display it. Now he took this one on 5/23, so he was out at the gravesite on Thursday. Friday, Wednesday or Thursday. My flower box hadn't arrived yet. And then I had a different way of preserving it. I did this. Gives you an idea of the layout. And I think we're just about coming to the end. And I am so happy that all of you came. And if you have not yet signed the guest book, please do. And if there's any exhibits or displays that you want to give more thought to, this little book here is filled with parades, lots of parades. Stacyville is big in parades. This book is filled with people who made ice on the Little Cedar River and then sold it, shipped it down to Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, and Waterloo. And there's a special family here in Stacyville that's so proud of their grandfather who made this ice, and his name is Ray Meyer. He has passed away, but it would be, we don't have an immediate relative here of Ray Meyer. But his grandchildren, they want these pictures. They want to have copies. These are sesquicentennial parades, centennial parades. I never showed you our centennial church plate. Looks like this. And I sure like the first line on the back. 1855, Nicholas Heeman and Adam Blake families, first to settle in Stacyville Township. First Mass was offered in Adam Blake's log cabin in 1858 or before. But Matt and I, we go back and forth. He says it's his great-great-grandfather that the first Mass was said. We go back and forth, and I just, it says it right here. The thread clippers, they have that corner over there is more or less all school. The school, the last principal was she was a gem, to say the least. She was a gem, and she saved all these things, and she had no problem. Well, they had the same problem I did in January to clean out the school. They had to clean out the convent, and where do you go with all that? You can't take it to retirement because when you go to retirement, you have very small quarters. You know, you can't take all these things with you. So some of the last teachers, their pictures are over there. And the first school was 100 years old in 1889. And the 7th and 8th graders, the upper grade kids, they were assigned to take a decade at a time. And they had to start the school history when the school started, like in 1874. They had to take that first decade, and they had to make a chart on every single decade. And that was also displayed on the chalkboard walls. It was so easy to do that. It's just take a whole wall and just, and the charts are preserved. They're in the showcases. The showcases right there, the blue ones, they come from my other building, which is the Chatterbox, which we're going to have refreshments in a little while before we melt away. I can't even feel the air conditioner. Can you? Is there an air conditioner?
Step outside.
Well, I purposely did not open up the screen doors today, left those closed. We took from school whatever we could save. The Julie Addington flower box on the gravesite is from woodwork from the school. That bookcase right here is from the school. We took a lot of hooks where we could, you know, where these basketball uniforms are displayed and where the Army uniforms are displayed. We took hooks. We were looking ahead. I have a huge hook down here on the floor because I thought we were going to get more uniforms than what we did, but you know, there are more uniforms to a you know, the real dress uniforms. I have a World War I complete uniform, Nick Adams, complete, everything, even the sewing kit. The sewing kit has the little buttons in it. It has the extra, if one of the little stripes or bars come off your shirt. The sewing kit had needle and thread, buttons and everything in it. Chaps.
I used to.
Do you have any questions?
I used to help mow that cemetery when I was a kid.
Really?
Yes.
Well, where did you live at the time?
Right across the street. I lived right across from the jail, and then we had a railing out there for the horses to, and I used to play on those, whatever they used, I suppose, chain or something. I used to play on those. And I'm surprised I didn't break an arm there yet, too.
Well, you mean where that cemetery is?
Yes, I was helping a family mow. They needed a little help, and I went out and helped mow.
This building itself was, in 1939, it was City Hall, and it housed the fire department, city jail, and meeting room. It was remodeled in November 1969, and that led to a library. The library that was in here was started by Zola Mullenbach, Cheryl's mother. She ran the library in here from 69 to 204. It was another librarian. But it was still library in 204. The Monitor Review used this building in 2010 and 2011, and I had somebody just this past week come up the steps and said he was going to pay his renewal fee for the Monitor Review. And I said, you know, they've moved. They're not here anymore. Takes a while to catch on to things. But he was going to pay his renewal money to me. I should have taken it.
Well, Mary, thank you for this program. I think we should give her a round of applause.